1980s would begin, and a new hockey dynasty would emerge. The rise of the New York Islanders would be swift. In only their 8th NHL season, they would begin their championship reign. Men of character, high scoring and hard hitting, the Islanders would win 4 Stanley Cups as they dominated the NHL. But greatness is fleeting, and as always, new superstars would emerge to seize their own moment of glory. It was a clash of titans, a battle to determine the best as the crown would pass to yet another generation. The love of the game became the love of your country as hockey took to the international stage. But the NHL battle would continue. Twice, Pittsburgh would raise the cup, and in victory, one player would become the very definition of character and courage.
I had to go out and play the first period in Atlanta, my first period in the NHL without a helmet on. And all of a sudden it changed my whole perspective about playing in the NHL. I was scared to death.
That first shift, I'll tell you, you could hardly hold a stick. And then I think the heart was beating kind of maybe 100 beats a minute more than it should have been.
When you get there, you're in awe to begin with, and how, what am I doing here, so to speak.
I was finally in the NHL getting a chance. And right here at Maple Leaf Gardens, it was just awesome.
And when I stepped on for the first time, I really actually wanted to bend over and kiss the ice.
Somebody asked me one time, he said, were there agents when you played hockey? I said, what's 10% of nothing? Nobody bothered us.
We had a great era, because you're a young boy that was going to come in, and if you made the NHL, play against players that were 20 years in the league.
When I was drafted by Montreal Canadiens, go into the dressing room and sit down and look over, and there's Frank Mahovlich, one of my idols when I was growing up. So, that was just a real thrill.
I played against Guy Lafleur and Jacques Lemaire and Larry Robinson, shooting against Kenny Dryden. That awe was just, goosebumps.
The thing I will never forget, when I came into the room, and I think it was like I was walking on a cloud. Just look around, see all those players.
Playing with Jean Beliveau, which has been listening the game on the radio when I was 5, 6 years old. And there we go, I'm with Jean Beliveau on the same ice, traveling with him to the airport because he was living in my hometown in Longueuil. Sure, that was a great thrill, and winning the Stanley Cup the first year.
I just played the game. I didn't worry about anything. I didn't keep notes. I wasn't sophisticated. I was nothing. I came to the rink, I played the game. Then I left. Simple as that. It's like anything else when you're playing in the backyard or you go to the river and you're playing on the river and you're not as quick or you're not as strong as the older guys, and everybody needs a target.
For Billy Smith, being a target would pay off. But growing up in Ontario, he played for the simple love of the game.
I had no expectations. I didn't think I was going to go anywhere in hockey. I was hoping that somewhere down the line there was a spot for me to play. And that's all I was really worried about, was just being able to play hockey.
Billy need never have worried. In 1972, after 2 seasons with the Los Angeles Kings organization, he was between the pipes with the expansion New York Islanders.
Well, the first 2 years with the Islanders, we really had a bad hockey team. But the thing that a lot of people didn't understand is we got to play in the NHL. We got to play the game we love. Yeah, we were bad, but the thing is, we give it 110%. We did our best.
Billy Smith was a latter-day Gump Worsley in that he looked less like a goaltender, and technically he performed less like a goaltender than anybody I'd ever seen.
The Gumper, you know, he'd be out there sprawling around, falling around, but the guy never give a rebound. And, you know, I even asked him one time, I says, Gumper, you got to tell me how you can do that. I said, it would help my game so much. He said, kid, just stop the puck.
Stopping the puck was just the beginning for Billy, as he brought a whole new meaning to the phrase, challenging the shooter.
The first time I saw Billy Smith play was on a tape, really, and the guy had a breakaway. I saw the guy go on a breakaway from center ice. By the time the guy got to the blue line, Billy Smith had raced out of his net and met him at the blue line and gave him a body check. So, you know, what else is there to be said about the way Billy played?
It's so funny because he used to say, don't get in front of a shot. Don't screen me. If you get in front of the shot, I remember I was battling with somebody, another guy in front of the net, and all of a sudden my ankle goes numb, and Smitty, I look at Smitty, he just chopped me. He said, I couldn't see the shot. Get out of the way. I'm trying to get the guy out from front of the net. So I'll take care of that guy. Get out of there.
Crazy on the ice at times. I mean, I was telling people that he wanted to fight with me in practice one day because we were having a showdown and I was putting a couple under the crossbar and he didn't like that and he came after me in practice.
You went out there, you went to win at all costs. Sometimes, mostly when I played, it was at all costs. And like I said, I was willing to hurt or even get hurt to win a hockey game.
Smith was an intense competitor, and in 1980, his combative style helped the Islanders win their first of 4 consecutive Stanley Cups. And as always, Billy would play the game his way.
Smith believed in old school hockey. Excuse me, young fellow, but if you're not wearing an Islander jersey, I officially hate you. I will continue to hate you, and he did.
One of the things that people have to understand is the fights. Are they real? Yes, they are. Can you get hurt? Absolutely. But that's part of the fun of it. Hey, I was not the cleanest hockey player. I know that. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And I always told my defense, if I get in a fight, nobody comes in. I mean, get in a good fight, you get lots of laughs. And not only was I entertaining the people in the crowd, I was entertaining myself.
I know, yeah, but I don't blame you. The only trouble is, Smitty, you broke the stick on him.
They gave him a good nickname, Battling Billy Smith. And during the regular season, he was good. He was good. But you know what he had the ability to do? He had the ability, come playoff time, to raise the level of his goaltending and become an all-star goaltender.
The difference between playoffs and the regular season is it's more intense. People are more aware. It's do or die.
Strong, not muscular, just tough, strong, up here, physically, in the heart, where you need to be a champion.
Smith would take home the Vezina Trophy in 1982 and was named the most valuable player in the 1983 playoffs. But in a lifetime of hockey, Battling Billy Smith was always a kid at heart.
Well, hockey to me was never having to grow up. And that's one of the things that why hockey's such a great sport. And the older you get, you don't grow up. You just love it that much.
I envisioned my father, you know, at night turning on the porch light and just watering the rink and sitting there in the window, a little frostiness on the window, had my skates sharpened, the sticks ready, everything was ready. The wool Montreal Canadiens sweater that I wore, couldn't wait for that ice to freeze. The next morning we'd be on it and skating. What a vivid memory of that. You know, those are like pictures that are imprinted in my brain that I hope will never leave me. I remember lying on my stomach in Mom and Dad's living room watching on TV and, you know, arms propped up like this and just watching the Canadiens parade around with the Stanley Cup. And it was Jean Beliveau carrying the cup around at the Montreal Forum. Jean Beliveau, for some reasons, just seemed to go through all of the barriers, and without a doubt, he was my idol, and right now at 45, he still is. At 13 years old, I had to make a decision. Should I stay and play football, which was really my love at that time, or make a move to hockey? And I think the explanation to my dad was, Dad, they're going to pay me $17 a week to play hockey. There is no question where I'm going.
Basically, at 15, Dennis was almost a full-grown man. And I think the thing that hit me right away was that he was a physical presence. I mean, he was a powerful physical force.
For 5 seasons, Dennis Potvin dominated the Ontario Junior Hockey League. And in 1973, the NHL was waiting.
We had first pick, we took Dennis Potvin, but it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. He was the best player. It was easy. I wish all our draft selections were that easy.
My first NHL game happened to be against the Atlanta Flames. I got to Atlanta, had the wrong color helmet. So now I had to, obviously, being a rookie, you're not going to say, no, I'm not going to play without a helmet. But it was totally against everything I'd learned. You know, protect yourself as best you can and, you know, have all of your equipment ready. I mean, you're not going to go hunting without the shells, you know. And so I had to go out and play the first period in Atlanta, my first period in the NHL without a helmet on. And all of a sudden it changed my whole perspective about playing in the NHL. I was scared to death.
But Potvin's Rookie of the Year season would see few mistakes, as he quickly established himself as one of the league's premier blue liners.
I always had this mental thing, you know, that, you know, I'll see the big guy on the other team and I'll try and I'll test him. I like to hit. I didn't mind being hit. You know, it was all part of the deal. I go through the middle of the line in football as opposed to run around the end. I didn't mind being hit. I just kind of went at it, and it created the juices in me sometimes that made me mad, yes. And I often played mad, which was sort of a better way for me to prepare and play.
When Denny Potvin hit somebody, he hit somebody with a purpose. It wasn't just a nudge off the play. He was going to go right through you. He was going to hit you in the next week.
I enjoyed hitting. I could hit, and I used it as a weapon. There's no question about it.
He'd finish his check. And if you were admiring where your pass was going, he was a stocky guy with a very thick torso, and he'd hit you and he'd just rattle you. I mean, you'd be rattled for the rest of the night.
I didn't like losing. I didn't like losing even the little battle. I mean, if I went to the corner with Mark Messier and Mark took the puck away from me, it made me mad. And I had a perfect guy to direct it at, you know, the opponent.
While his size and strength made Potvin a fearsome checker, he was an equally dangerous threat in the offensive zone.
What he had better than anybody else that I saw was that wrist shot from the blue line. Like, he could shoot rockets with a wrist shot, so on the power play and stuff, you know, when he shot it, you just hope it didn't hit you. You know, that's what you got a goalie for, right? I mean, yeah, Potvin is as good as anybody who's ever played the game in any position, I think.
But people, I don't think they really appreciated how good he really was. I mean, he had to play at least 35, 40 minutes a game. Some nights he was, it seems like he was out there all the time. And he was an unbelievable guy on the blue line. You know, he did everything. You know, he was on the power play, penalty killing. It was like he was on the ice all the time.
Potvin's drive and determination made him a born leader, the perfect candidate to lead the Islanders on their quest for hockey greatness.
Al Arbor and Bill Torrey had me in the office one day after they'd named me captain of the team, and they gave me this book on the great captains of the National Hockey League. And again, Jean Beliveau's picture was right there on the front. It was unbelievable. And of course, you had Bobby Clark inside, and you know, Red Kelly, and you had a lot of guys who were talking a little bit about what it was to be captain. And so they wanted me to read the book, and I did. And it really came down to one thing. It meant to be, you know, be selfish in one way, that the only thing you think about is winning.
Well, there's intensity, and then there's intensity at Dennis's level. But he was our captain in New York, and I was terrified of him. I truly was. I respected him so much, and he certainly wasn't afraid to stand up in a dressing room and tell anybody what he thought of them or what he thought of their play. He was incredibly intense.
Real strong desire to be the very best at his position. Wanted to contribute, and all those things are very contagious when you sit next to somebody like that, because you go, wow, here's all this Here's a guy who wants to be not only good, but great all the time. And it's kind of contagious.
There's a motivation that is needed to put together a winning product, and everybody clamors from age 10 to 90. How am I going to get it done? Everybody does it differently. And to me, the word ego has a bad connotation, but I've never seen a guy who's done anything in his life, whether on and off the ice, and not have a tremendous belief in himself.
Dennis would accomplish his goals. Along with 4 Stanley Cups, Potvin would 3 times win the Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman and receive 5 first-team All-Star selections. Born to play the game, hockey was his life.
There were times in my life when I really felt, the only time I really felt good was when the doors opened and I got on the ice. And that lasted a long, long time. That's really where I found my peace.
Dennis Potvin retired in 1988, the first defenseman to break the 1,000-point barrier. But in a highlight-filled career, one memory stands out.
The 4th Stanley Cup was really special because we weren't supposed to win. I mean, this is when the Oilers were by far picked as being the favorites to win that cup, and then we went in and beat them 4 straight. And the 4th game, fortunately, was on home ice. A lot of emotion was running through me throughout all of that because my father had gone through chemotherapy. He had battled cancer for a number of months up to that point. And Dad was up in one of the boxes upstairs and with my older brother. So when I raised the cup, you know, I looked up. It was a long way off, and it's probably just my imagination. But, you know, I'm pretty sure to this day I saw the tear in his eye, and, you know, just the total feeling of satisfaction. And I saw him after that several times, but never did he look as good as that. So, you know, as we go on in life, we have one of the very fortunate abilities is to choose the memories you want to keep, and that's the one I want to keep.
Well, I guess inside I'm probably a perfectionist, and I like to do things well. If I'm going to do something, I'd like to do it well.
Growing up in Montreal, Mike Bossy always believed that practice made perfect. And even as a young boy, he felt that his hard work would one day pay off.
If you're out there playing a hockey game by yourself, I mean, you become very creative. You're playing defense, you're playing against yourself, you're the goalie, and you know, so you develop, I think, a lot of creativity. I just sort of took it for granted that that was going to be my calling when I got older. So for me, when I was young, it was just a matter of going through the stages that I had to go through to get to the National Hockey League.
We had a scout in Montreal, our Quebec scout, Henry Saraceno, who coached Mike as a bantam when he was 12, and obviously I knew the family, so we watched Mike pretty carefully. And I can remember very clearly that day of the draft, Henry Saraceno coming into my office and putting a picture of Mike up on the mantle behind my desk. And I turned and looked at it and I said, Henry, there's no way that Mike Bossy is going to last through 15th in the draft. I said, somebody's going to take him, so let's not get our hopes up.
The Quebec League was known as a non-checkers league. It wasn't particularly physical. And in that respect, Mike Bossy was not a physical player, nor was he a particularly good checker, but he could really score goals.
Although yet to play a single game in the NHL, Mike Bossy never doubted his own abilities, especially when it came time to negotiate his first contract.
And Mike Bossy turned to me and he said, that's not a very good offer for a guy that's going to get you 50 goals. And I said, well, you're right, Mike. That's not a good enough offer for a guy that's going to get me 50. But I said, you're coming into the NHL. And I said, if you could get me 25 to 30, I'd be very happy. He says, no. He said, I'm going to get 50 goals.
I went in front of Bill Torrey with a straight face and told him that I would score 50 goals if I played regularly in the NHL, and he laughed at me as soon as I said it. And I sort of felt a little dumb when I said it, but I mean, I said it as a negotiating ploy, but I mean, deep down I had always had confidence in my abilities, and I knew who was on that team, and I knew that if I had the chance to play with certain people, that there was a chance that I could do it.
I get into camp, and I'm playing against this kid on right wing who's got a terrific shot, and I'm saying, wow, he's got a cannon. And he's picking the corner, like he's blasting these pucks from the right side, and he's picking the corner every time he comes down the ice. Or he's going 5-hole, or he's blasting it glove high. I mean, he had a cannon, and he's just a young kid. And I'm saying, who's this guy? So they're, oh, that's Mike Bossy. He's a first-round draft choice.
Bossy had promised 50 goals, and on a line with Clark Gillies and Brian Trottier, he would deliver. With 53 goals, he set a rookie's scoring record and won the 1978 Calder Trophy. But Bossy was no one-season wonder. His ability to consistently score was remarkable. For the New York Islanders, the game plan was simple. Get the puck to Bossy.
His slap shot looked good. His snap shot looked good. His backhand looked good. I say, God, that was a great goal. What a real pretty goal.
There's no doubt that whenever you do something, you want to do it well, you want to be successful, and you want it to look good.
Given him and the goaltender, you just didn't think the goaltender could make a save. You thought automatically that Bossy would score.
For 9 straight seasons, Bossy would score 50 goals or more, always driving himself to play the perfect game.
Nothing that I hated more than missing the net. To me, it was like a pro golfer missing a one-footer.
Never seen him play a bad hockey game. Every night that he came to the rink, he was ready to play. There was no excuses, no nothing. And that's where he really showed his leadership. He showed guys that he was consistent, he could always score the big goals for us, and he never had an excuse. And that's what made him a real superstar.
And he would take a lot of abuse and a lot of beatings, but he was tough. He just kept going back. He had more of a will to score than anybody I've ever seen.
As a constant offensive threat, Bossy was a marked man in the NHL.
He was a marvelous, marvelous talent who took a lot of abuse. And to Mike Bossy's credit, he would never fight.
I wasn't going to drop my gloves. I said, you can push me around, you can hit me all you want, but I'm going to get back up and do what I have to do to help my team win.
But he understood that the game, and he was convinced that the game was more a team sport, was more a skill game than anything else, and he was just preaching by his performance. But on the other side, he was totally against the fact that you could spoil that beautiful game with fights.
For Mike Bossy, playing his own game paid off. With 5 first-team All-Star selections, 3 Lady Byng Awards, 4 Stanley Cups, and the 1982 Conn Smythe Trophy.
When I started my career, I said I wanted to play 10 years, and after I'd scored 50 goals my first year, I said I wanted to play 10 years and score 50 goals every year I played. So the most disappointing aspect of my back injury was the fact that I wasn't able to score 50 goals that last year because I wanted to do something that no one else had ever done before.
He just started to score the minute he hit the league and never stopped until his back kind of went out on him. He just scored throughout his whole career, and I truly believe he's the greatest goal scorer that I ever saw.
Mike Bossy, a natural goal scorer, retired in 1987.
And you know, you go out and you do what you have to do, and if you're successful at it and it makes other people happy, well, I mean, what else can you ask for?
I can remember my first stick was a Hiawatha, and I didn't have any hockey gloves. I bought a pair of pants from Darryl Guard for $2, and they had no plastic padding. It was just like a pair of fluffy pants. And I used Dad's sweater, which was kind of very, very long down to my knees. It was all rolled up and tucked into these little fluffy pants. Dad would just chop the beaver dam, and the water would kind of flow, and you'd have fresh ice. And you could hear your skates right on the top of it. It kind of made like a nice hollow sound, like a whoosh, whoosh. And it'd be so cold, your nose would freeze, and your tips of your ears, because we had little toques that wouldn't quite cover everything, and we never wanted to stop. And we'd go into the house when our toes were so cold, and we'd come crying up, and we'd say, never going skating again. As soon as your toes would like thaw, boom, we'd be back down there again.
For Brian Trottier, life on a small ranch in Saskatchewan was simple. In the winter, it was hockey. In the summer, he thrilled the crowds as a rodeo star.
I mean, I enjoyed the applause. I enjoyed, you know, the oohs and the ahs, and, you know, the recklessness and the aggressiveness of some of the rodeo style of life. You know, being on top of a horse and, you know, wearing a cowboy hat was very cool.
Playing junior hockey in Western Canada, the professional game seemed a distant dream. But as the NHL grew, new opportunities arose.
All the older guys were saying, oh, geez, I hope I'm drafted by one of the expansion teams. You know, I won't have to go to the minors and spend so much time down there. So I was thinking, yeah, me too. You know, I'd like to do that too. And sure enough, I lucked out. I got drafted by the Islanders.
I remember Brian Trottier, the very first game he played against the Boston Bruins. We were the toughest team in sports at the time. And he wasn't very big. And I remember he hit one of our guys, and I turned and I said, hey, who the heck is that guy? And from then on, you knew. And the big thing is he could really hit.
So Brian Trottier was one of those guys that were, I'm sure at the end of the game, most of the players that played a lot of minutes against Brian did not enjoy the game very much. Not only because he hurt you with his ability, or his line hurt you, or his team was too good for you, but he made life tough on you, and he did it in a nice, clever, not-to-be-noticed way most nights.
In world history, the greatest fan of Brian Trottier would have been Isaac Newton, who discovered the law of gravity, and the reason why is that the law of gravity suited Brian Trottier's body better than any player who ever lived. You could hit Brian Trottier any way you want, he simply would not go over. He would tilt this way, tilt that way, but he had mastered the law of gravity.
I think that the one thing that always struck me about Brian is the sheer power of his body. I don't think that many people realize how strong and how big he was until they got run over by, you know, Brian Trottier.
Just an MO for Brian Trottier game. Win the first draw right off the bat against you. The first time he had a chance, run over you. It wasn't personal. It was just the way hockey was supposed to be played.
Trottier's combination of strength and skill was a perfect fit for the New York Islanders. After winning the 1976 Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, Brian would go on to win both the league scoring title and Most Valuable Player awards in 1979.
He had a desire to be the best, and that's what made us good, is because we played together, but we wanted to be better than each other. And if ever there were times that you felt a little lazy or you just didn't feel into it, you know, he was there to bring me up.
You get in the zone, and all of a sudden, the puck finds holes, the puck finds you, you feel so confident, you ride the wave as long as you possibly can. I can remember being on scoring streaks and just saying, wow, I'm gonna score some points tonight. I just feel it.
In 1980, the Islanders would face the Philadelphia Flyers in the Stanley Cup Final. Trottier's performance was outstanding, winning him the Conn Smythe Award. It's a moment etched in his mind forever.
We win the Stanley Cup. Overtime goal. Split second. In that split second, you are now a champion. Every sacrifice your family made, every dedicated moment to practice that you ever put into it culminates right at that particular moment. And I can remember just going over and just touching it, you know, with both my hands and feeling the names engraved. Then I wanted to kind of take a quick look at some of the names I touched, you know, and you see, you know, players like Pierre Pilote, you know, and you look on this side, you're like Maurice Richard, and you're like, wow, this is fantastic. You don't even know the names like at the top of the bowl, you know, from the early days. And you can remember how nice and cool it felt. I mean, it was like a nice, cool stainless feel. And then when you pick it up, actually how heavy it is. It's not light, so picking it up actually is like, yeah, you know, it's a little bit of a rush because it's not like it's 5 pounds, you know, it's however heavy it is. It feels like it's about 40 pounds or whatever, but it was, you know, I was expecting something like a little piece of tin, but it's heavy. And it was just a really special moment.
There isn't any question that Brian Trottier was a man, you know, possessed to be one of the great players of all time in the National Hockey League. And he had the ability to win. He had a great desire to want to win, and he did that night after night.
After 15 seasons, the Islanders' all-time leader in points and assists would move on, taking his leadership to a franchise on the rise.
And I said, this is going to be my new identity. It's going to be a Pittsburgh Penguin, and I'm going to give everything I can possibly give to them, on and off the ice, whatever it takes in order to bring back a championship.
4 Stanley Cup rings with the Islanders. And then when many of us thought maybe he had seen his better days, he proved to us that he hadn't by going to Pittsburgh and becoming a pretty important player on 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh. So that's 6 rings for Brian Trottier.
I was such a fan when I was a kid, you know. I didn't have like these big aspirations like, well, I want to be as good as this guy, I'm going to be as great as that guy, I'm going to be the best that ever played. I was just a kid who wanted to play hockey. And I wanted to one day, hopefully, just play 1 game in the NHL.
Well, hockey to me is my whole life, and the game has given me a lot throughout my career, and the game means everything to me. It all began in Montreal. That's where I grew up, and probably the furthest I can remember is skating with my 2 brothers, pushing a chair on the ice, and I was probably 3.5 years old when I started. And just remember I did that for about a couple hours and then let the chair go and started skating on my own. So when I started playing, my dad used to drive me to practice every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, or my mom. They used to dress me as I was waking up in the morning, put my skates on and so forth. Guy Lafleur was my idol. I used to watch him every Saturday night on TV. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be the best in the world, and he really inspired my career right from the start.
From the moment he stepped on the ice, Mario Lemieux was a star. And in junior hockey, he was a scoring sensation, breaking records set by his boyhood idol, Guy Lafleur.
Well, junior hockey was a great period of my life. I played 3 years. I was fortunate enough to play 3 years for Laval. We started with the worst team in the junior ranks in '81, and 2 years later we won our championships.
Le premier choix de Pittsburgh, number 66, Mario Lemieux.
Mario, I think of 2 things, greatness, and I think of adversity. When he went to Pittsburgh, when he was drafted the prior year, the team had won 16 games, the fan support was tepid at best, and he sparked an interest and rejuvenated that franchise. He in effect saved the franchise.
The task was daunting. I mean, we kind of take it for granted now. He came as an 18-year-old to the worst team in the league, to a completely different culture, to a completely different language. That challenge can seem overwhelming. It doesn't seem that way now because he handled it so easily. But you know, other players have crumbled under that kind of pressure.
The first time in training camp, he just took the puck first shift, walked in and scored a goal. First exhibition game, first shift, scores a goal. We walk into Boston and, our opening night, here you got the best player, defenseman Ray Bourque. And, he just turned him inside a little bit and he goes, 200 feet to score a goal.
Well, the toughest challenge my first year in the NHL was to play against men. And, when you play in juniors, you play against 16, 17, 18-year-old. And in the NHL, you play with guys that are 30, 35, sometimes 40 years old. So it was a tough adjustment. Players were stronger, faster, a lot more experience.
But Mario was equal to the task. In his rookie campaign, he would record 100 points. He was a magical player, a joy to watch.
One of the most beautiful hockey exhibitions that we have seen over the years is the Canada Cup in 1987 when Mario Lemieux played with Gretzky. He became a winner playing alongside with Gretzky. He learned a lot from this Canada Cup, and what a show it was.
After beating Team USA, Gretzky and Lemieux would lead Canada into the best-of-3 final series against the powerful Soviet Union team.
And I said to him that day, I said, Mario, listen, you're stronger than I am. I said, we passed about the same, but I said, you got a better shot. So if we get a 2-on-1 again, I said, when I give you the puck, you put it in. Don't worry about giving it back to me. So it was like, okay. So we get into game 3, and what happens? We get a 2-on-1. And I remember all that was going through my mind was, he's going to get the puck, and he's going to put it in. And when I gave it to him, it was in the top corner. It was bang, bang. It was in the net.
It's only happened once. It'll never happen again. Greatest natural passer and the greatest natural goal scorer of all time. And sure enough, Gretzky made the pass, and Mario scored the goal, and I wonder what the goaltender was thinking.
We all learned from Mario. We got a lot out of him. He learned from us. He learned from me. So it was like a give and take, and it was really a lot of fun.
Well, I think the Canada Cup really changed my career and gave me a lot of confidence. Really taught me how to win, how to practice, and went back to Pittsburgh and was fortunate enough to win 2 Stanley Cup after that.
Mario would lead Pittsburgh to their first ever Stanley Cup in 1991. And they would repeat as champions the following year.
I was fortunate enough to work the telecasts of the Penguins the 2 years they won the Stanley Cup in the finals. And I think in those 2 years I saw Mario Lemieux lift the individual part of hockey to a level that I don't think I've ever seen anybody do it before.
Mario was MVP in each of his Stanley Cup victories, but the first remains fresh in his mind.
To have a chance to win the Cup that year was incredible, and I remember the emotions that I had after we won our last game in Minnesota, coming into the dressing room and seeing my parents there, my girlfriend, my family, brothers, was very special, and just started crying right away. And it was very emotional, but I think at the end it was all worth it.
On the ice, his spectacular play would continue. But on January 12, 1993, everything would change for Mario Lemieux.
Well, it's very difficult when you go see a doctor in his office and tells you that you have cancer. It's something that is very difficult to accept. You start thinking about your family, which is very difficult. I've had some relatives in my family that had Hodgkin's in the past, so all these memories come back to you, and it's just very difficult to accept. I left the doctor's office that day, tried to get home, which was very difficult. I had to stop a couple times on the side of the road because I was crying too much and couldn't see the road. Went home for about a half hour. I couldn't tell my girlfriend, Natalie, at the time, and it took me a long time to decide to tell her, and it was probably the worst day of my life.
Just sat back and said, wow, how could someone at the prime of their life, this type of athlete, be afflicted with this kind of disease? And yet the determination showed through again, because Mario was taking radiation treatments, and you kept hearing rumors that he wanted to come and skate at practice.
Just the fact that I set my mind to come back that year really helped me get through the whole process of radiation and the cancer. And I felt very fortunate when I came back in Philadelphia that night to be back on the ice and be a part of the team again.
I don't think I'll ever forget the game that he played in Philadelphia after he'd taken the brief break for his Hodgkin's treatment, went for his last radiation treatment, got on a plane in the afternoon, and then played in Philly that night and scored a goal. I mean, that's one of the all-time great sports stories, and it probably doesn't get the attention it deserves.
Lemieux comes in, shoots and scores! Mario Lemieux drills it in, his 40th of the year, and the Penguins make it 3-2.
To battle through something like that, you got to have a love for the sport. And I think that's what Mario had. He really enjoyed the game and he loved to play. And that's why and how he was able to battle through it.
Mario would return to the game he loved. That season, in one of the greatest comebacks in sports history, he would win both the league scoring title and the most valuable player award.
Here he comes. He'll make his move in on Van Beesbroek. He shoots and scores.
I was always trying to go top shelf and try to hit the pipe and have it to go in. And that was the best feeling that I got when I was on the ice, was trying to hit that post on the top shelf and scoring a goal.
You know, there's not very many players, I would say, that you'd pay the price they're asking for tickets now. But Mario Lemieux was one. You could go to a game and at least 2 or 3 times, if not a dozen times, he'd do something nobody else could do. And in the National Hockey League, that's something.
Drop it up to Lemieux. He's right there. His shot. He shoots and scores. Number 500.
For Mario, the goals kept coming. But the hard-hitting life of an NHL player was taking its toll. Back injuries plagued Lemieux, causing him to miss the entire 1994-95 season.
Well, the back pain was pretty intense for a couple of years, to the point where I couldn't tie my shoes or I couldn't tie my skates. We had one of our trainers come in before every game and tie my skates, and that's how I got on the ice. I remember for a couple of years, very seldom I practiced. I just played games.
And literally, when I tell you that he would sit on an airplane, could not put his bags or anything above the overhead, would sit on that plane by himself, not really able to move too well, and never, ever, ever complain. Never.
Despite illness and injury, Mario Lemieux would persevere. Returning to the ice, he would regain his position as the league's dominant offensive player. But it was getting ever more difficult for Mario to perform his magic, and he decided it was time to play his final game.
I think it was an emotional game for everybody in the Pittsburgh organization. Again, he topped it off again. Late in the game, he takes it all the way through, puts it in the net, he ended on a great note. But it was very emotional, for all the players, the management, the ownership, to lose something like that, NHL lost a hell of a guy when they lost Mario.
It was just so typical of him. He had such a flair for the dramatic. The fact that he scored his first goal in his first shift, his first shot in his first game in the National Hockey League, and then he scored a goal in his last shift of his last game.
I just felt that it was the right time for me to leave the game, and I think looking back, it was the right decision.
Although Mario ended his playing career in 1997, his life in hockey was far from over.
We've always known that Pittsburgh was a great hockey market for us, and the support historically had been very good. I knew that Mario was the one person that everybody felt comfortable with, that everybody could trust, and that he could bring everybody together.
This guy does transcend anything that is hockey in Pittsburgh. And he is hockey in Pittsburgh. And no one else could have saved this team. No one.
Mario Lemieux, one of the greatest to ever take to the ice. Today, his dedication to the game of hockey continues as an owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
he can come back now and win the scoring championship right now. That's so much talent this guy has. You know, it's unfortunate that he's not, but I'm sure the Penguins would like to see him just on the power play some nights. The rodeo was more Dad than us because he was very into the ranch kind of thing, and because we had, you know, we milked a cow twice a day, and we had, you know, the chickens, and Grandpa always had pigs, and you know, we were always cleaning something up. You know, it was always the barn or the pig pen, and we say, gee whiz. And next thing you know, we started going to Gymkhana's, which was barrel racing and pole bending and hide races, and it was a great sport. And eventually we got into rodeos because now I was getting a little older. Dad would always do calf roping and team roping because he was a very, very good cowboy, and taught us all these little tricks, you know, how to rope a cow and how to break horses. And we were breaking horses every spring, but we weren't breaking them, you know, with one holding one hand in the air, and we were holding on for dear life. And we go to the rodeos. My brother Monty was a much better rodeo guy than myself. I rode steers till I was about 15, and then I just got too big. My body got too big, and I couldn't hold it up. But he was this little wiry little guy, Monty, and he would hang on to the broncs. He would hang on to he wanted to go on bull riding, and we kind of talked him out of that. We said, no, we love you a little too much to see a bull stomp all over you. And but you know, it was kind of reckless, and it was fun, and it was athletic at the same time, and the family was really into it. My sister did the ladies barrel racing for a long time, and I left home before Kathy got involved. But every rodeo that we went to, Dad would play the music afterwards. So, you know, we always had a family band, and he taught me how to play bass guitar, and Kathy, my sister, would sing, and next thing you know, we're going to the rodeos, playing the music afterwards. So Dad said, oh, if we lose money in the rodeo, we'll make a little money back here at the dance hall. So it was, and actually the dances kind of paid for the hockey equipment in the winter too. So there was a lot of reasons why it was going on. Well, the band was called, in the early days, it was called Buzz and the Boys. But when Kathy got involved and I started getting involved, we always picked up one or two extra musicians, you know, whether it was a drummer or lead guitar player, and we played all over the country. We played country music, a lot of what Dad called grassland music, you know, the early country music, you know, Hank Williams and got Buck Owens, all those songs, and Merle Haggard. And then my sister started singing. She'd sing a lot of Dolly Parton songs, and Tammy Wynette. We have an older cousin who's a terrific singer and songwriter now down in Nashville. And she'd come up for the summer and play music with Dad, and it became the Trottier family. Just a simple name, and everybody knew us. A very bad vocal singer. If I had to make a living at it, I'd starve to death. It was really, Dad was the lead singer. Kathy would come up and sing God for an hour, and then I'd just kind of hum in the background, maybe sing a little harmony once in a while. But Dad and I had a lot of songs that we sang together, and people seemed to enjoy us. We didn't chase too many people out of the building. They always came back for more. But Dad was quite an entertainer. You know, he always had, you know, little one-liners in between songs, and he made it enjoyable for us as kids. And I'm sure it was pretty enjoyable for people out there to see live entertainment and a bunch of little kids running around on the stage. And I left when I was like 17 and stopped doing the band because I was playing junior hockey. But in summertime, I'd come back and jump right in as if, you know. And they'd all tell me, oh, you're doing so good, so good. And I'd be like, God, I'm out of practice. And it was just good encouragement. And so I'd stopped playing for about 20 years, and I just picked up the guitar here the last several years and started trying to reteach myself a lot of the basic stuff and enjoying it all over again.
the day Brian Trottier made his debut with the Islanders, I looked at him and I said, this kid looks like he's not old enough to be bar mitzvahed. I mean, this guy looked like he looked like an overgrown baby. It was just, and then he got on the ice and he dominated. He dominated. Now, of course, when he came up, it was there was no question that you know, he's going to play a few exhibition games. We'll send him to the American League. And he says, sorry, Bill Torrey, I beg your pardon. I am not going down to any American League. I am staying in the NHL. And do you know why, Mr. Torrey? Because I belong. Went out on the ice, opening game, dominated, and did not stop dominating. At one point, Bill Chadwick, Hall of Fame referee, who was a commentator for the Rangers games on MSG Network, told me more than once that Brian Trottier was the greatest hockey player he had ever seen. Now, this is in the early 1980s. I said, Bill, you saw Gordie Howe from beginning to end. Gordie Howe was the greatest hockey player I ever saw. He said, Brian Trottier. Now, that gives you an idea how one very intelligent appraiser thought about Brian Trottier, because he did everything. He scored. He was the architect of goals. He played tough. He gave Bob Gainey one of the hardest hits I have ever seen. You know, you watch Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, and you see these guys smack through a brick wall, and they come out the other side. It's cartoon. Well, Brian Trottier hit Gainey into the end boards, and I thought Gainey was going to wind up in New Jersey. That was the hardest hit I ever saw. Gainey was pretty tough. Flat. Absolutely horizontal. Scary.
I was still playing like Bantam and midget hockey in Ottawa. My brother Jean went to the training camp, made the team. I watched the team from afar. And then I believe it was early in the following year, early in 1968, January, February, I was sitting down having a beautiful big chicken dinner Mom had prepared. It was about 6 o'clock, and Jean was just getting ready to go play for the 67s, and they were playing the Niagara Falls Flyers that night. And actually, I was going to go to the game. So I'm sitting there. I'll never forget it. My back's to the wall. Mom's on my right. Dad's on my left. And we're having a nice dinner, and the phone rings. John, who's sitting in front of me but not eating, he had eaten a little earlier, as most hockey players would. He went and picked up the phone. Well, my brother and I have been very close for a long, long time, and body language is something that you tend to understand, you know, between siblings. My brother gets on the phone. There's no word from my brother, and I'm looking up at him, and then he just kind of slowly turns around, and he looks at me. I dropped my fork. I knew something was going on. He told me at that point, he said, Dennis, do you want to play tonight? I couldn't believe it. I dropped my fork, I stopped eating, and I went to the hockey game and played my first game for the Ottawa 67s. When I started playing on a regular basis for the Ottawa 67s, I wasn't allowed to play on the road. Dad had contracted with Howard Darwin, the owner of the 67s, that I would only play at home, and I would get $20 a game, which was fantastic. I mean, this was unbelievable. But yet I couldn't play on the road. One of the big things that happened at that time is the fact that my brother was with the team. So Dad, my brother Jean tells a story of Dad sitting him down. Of course, I wasn't there at the time. But Jean tells a story of my dad sitting him down and saying, look, Denis is going to play, and I've already talked to Bill Long, the coach. Denis is not going to be on the ice without you being on the ice. And if anybody takes liberties with your younger brother, I want you to settle it. So Jean tells a story and has his mandate, right? But by that time, you know, now I was 13. I was weighing about 185 pounds, and Jean was about 190. So we were kind of getting pretty close in size. But obviously, Jean, 4 years my elder, was much more mature, and he had been in a few scraps before, so I felt pretty safe. But that's really how it started in terms of the comfort factor. And it didn't last long because, I don't know if I should say it here, but one day I missed school. And my father found me shooting billiards. From that point on, Dad said, look, kid, if you're not going to go to school, you're going to play hockey. And so I ended up playing every game after that with the Ottawa 67s. And I'm sorry about my schooling and all that, but I did pick it up a little later.
Denny Potvin was a marvelous, marvelous study of a stubborn virtuoso who had an equally stubborn coach. Now, if it was up to Denny Potvin, he would have done exactly what Bobby Orr did, and that is spend his entire playing lifetime in the other end of the rink, going for goals, setting up goals. Denny Potvin would have been to Mike Bossy and Brian Trottier was Bobby Orr was to Phil Esposito and Kenny Hodge. There was one major difference. Al Arbour. No, you are not going to go in that zone whenever you damn please. You are going to play hockey the way I said it. Denny Potvin. No, my friend, Mr. Arbour. I am going to do it my way. It was the irresistible force against the immovable object. And guess what? Al Arbour would not move, and the irresistible force moved just enough to the right, and it was a happy blend. Denny Potvin becomes a Hall of Famer, not like Bobby Orr. Denny Potvin played in his own end, body checker, fearsome, absolutely a relentless hitter. Some would say he was dirty. Yes, my good friend, I am dirty like Ted Lindsay was dirty, like Ted Harvey was dirty when he had to be. That was part of the entire fabric. Great passer, great body checker, and when he had to be, dirty and a clutch player. Now, in his own way, Denny Potvin, one of the great players of all time at defense. Bobby Orr did it one way. He blended. He was a blender. Now, Bobby Orr did phenomenal things, changed the whole way hockey is played. But Denny Potvin, total defenseman.